I want to introduce Finn today and our platform for car subscription essentially, and hopefully also our contribution how we can make the transportation sector a bit more sustainable and also contribute to the decarbonization. Real quick, started Finn basically with a couple of co-founders back in 2019, so roughly 3 years now active with Finn. Before that I was working at BCG mainly in the automotive and mobility sector, so already had a lot of exposure to models like car sharing and car subscription before, which was definitely great use when starting Finn. But let's maybe start with having a look at what market we're actually looking at and what we're targeting. So essentially, we're looking at the car market in Germany and the US until now, which is by far, if you look at new and used cars combined, the biggest retail market or the biggest retail vertical in the world. At the same time, it's highly fragmented, with also the biggest players only accounting for a minority of the market, which actually provides just a very good basis, basically, for disruption and also entering that market. What is most interesting, however, about that market is the low e-commerce penetration rate. So while other verticals, like electricals, office, etc., have already gone through this penetration from offline to online buying, the car industry has not. So it's a massive opportunity and probably the largest still untapped consumer industry out there that has not gone through that shift. So we expect that this will change drastically in the upcoming years and provides a very good platform and very attractive basis then also to start a business around that. What was the issue in the past, basically, with the car ownership experience? Most of it was offline, so 99% of cars are sold offline. It comes with tedious processes for the customers, but also, and this is something we heard also before, basically around the subscription models in general, it does come with huge commitments, not only financially, but also in terms of times. People usually commit when they buy a car for multiple years, and this is something we wanted to address. It also does come with a lot of transparency, how much a car actually costs to you, so we wanted to provide an alternative that brings more transparency and also predictability to that market. I will talk about that in a second, but one of the big things also is the transition to electric cars does come with a lot of hurdles. There's a lot of anxiety from consumers around electric cars, which just basically keeps them away from actually using electric cars as a feasible alternative to combustion engines. And then maybe how we address that. I think essentially Finn is about really building a true e-commerce experience for cars, which for us means basically having vast assortment, having quickly available assortment also of many brands on the website, a fully digital online process where you can kind of get to your car within a couple of minutes, and then what I already addressed, basically also bringing that flexibility to users, but also allowing them to use a car specifically to their demand. So we offer term commitments from 1 to 12 months, basically, which also enables us to address different use cases, people that only temporarily need a car and don't want to basically buy a car which they might not use for years, but only for a certain amount of time. I mentioned that, but also for us, basically, car subscription is the ideal launchpad, so to say, for electric vehicles. I will talk about the anxieties of consumers around electric vehicles in a second, but we're already now at a 30% EV share, plan to increase that further and get to 100% EV share in the upcoming years. And on top of that, we compensate basically every kilometer driven with Finn cars together with our partners, Climate Partner, who also spoke yesterday. The car industry itself and why we believe basically on top of what I already mentioned, this is such a huge opportunity also for us as a company. There's many things going on in the industry at the same time. It's probably the most disruptive times in the industry ever. Essentially, we have the possibility to combine multiple of these trends within one business model at the same time. We talked about offline to online. So if you really see that increase from roughly 1% to 25% and more in the upcoming years, it would just mean that basically in the future, getting a car online is going to be the predominant form. Ownership to access, also there, I think we've seen that with many, many different goods so far, but people are less eager to actually buy things, but rather look for using them. And I think it's the same with cars. Ultimately, the car as a status symbol decreases more and more, and in the end, people are looking for mobility and not necessarily owning a car. And we have the opportunity to provide that access without the people owning those assets. And the last one, and I think also with the EU commitments to electrical cars, there is a huge shift from gasoline or internal combustion engines to electric cars, which we want to address. Now, our core purpose is basically making mobility more fun and sustainable. When we talk about fun, it's essentially making this car usage experience as seamless as possible, but also as effortless as possible, that consumers basically have peace of mind about using the car, not only when it comes to certain incidences and by offering an all-inclusive model and taking care of everything that can happen to a car, and also by providing a more sustainable form to private car usership that we've seen in the past. Essentially, and this is I think the main point I wanted to talk about, is also how we basically can become a launchpad for electric cars, because we strongly believe that only electric cars or alternative forms of engines are actually a way to decarbonize the transportation industry, which accounts for roughly 12% of our overall CO2 emissions in the world. So if we have an opportunity to change that, it will have a massive impact. Most consumers at the point in time still are basically very anxious about getting an electric car. They fear the long-term commitment that comes with it. They fear the speed of the technological progress. A car you might buy now is outdated basically in 1 or 2 years. And they also feel the residual value anxiety. How are gonna residual values of cars develop, especially in the basically coming out of the pandemic and all the disruptions we've seen in automotive production. It's very uncertain now. On top of that, with the crisis, how residual values can or will develop. And I think also a big issue is around charging infrastructure. People don't really know if they can already kind of fulfill their day-to-day and everyday life with an electric vehicle as a feasible alternative. And I think with just having like a model without any big commitments, we can really take away the fear basically and offer kind of a test ride for EVs. We've seen that 87% of people that used an electric vehicle at Finn in the past basically remained with an electric vehicle. So I think it proves that this can really be an entrance to electric cars. In Germany, last year and this year, the progression around electric cars has been actually not that fast. So while in 2021, 14% of cars were electric, this year we've been growing to roughly 15%, not a lot of growth. At Finn, we're a bit north of 30% at the moment, and as mentioned, we're aiming to basically get to 100% as fast as possible. On top of that, and I mentioned that, we're basically compensating every kilometer driven in a Finn car, and also contribute to the overall CO2 offsetting there. Now, we're quickly looking at who is actually using us as an alternative. First of all, we strongly believe that car subscription is not going to be a mass market. It really has the potential to become a mass market product. On the private consumer B2C side, we're targeting roughly, or most of the time, young families, basically in their 30s and 40s, to really have this alternative. 60% of our revenue does come from private consumers, but at the same time, we're also building up our B2B business and are already at a share of 40% there. Typically, small and medium-sized companies that would use Finn as an alternative to their traditional ways of getting a car, be it either leasing or buying. We'll skip that in a matter of time, maybe quickly looking at where we are active. So we launched in Munich back in 2019, then expanded to Germany, and pretty fast for a German startup decided to expand to the US. So in 2021, we took the decision and went live by the beginning of this year. We now set base in New York and expand in the Northeast region of the United States, which is already a huge market opportunity for us, way bigger than Germany. But also beginning of next year, we'll target California and then hopefully Florida right after. How did we develop in the last 3 years since being started? We just surpassed 100 million in annual recurring revenue in October this year, so it's been quite a ride and quite a steep growth. We're looking at roughly closing the year at 125 million in annual recurring revenue. And yeah, basically what also fueled our growth is the strong partnerships we were able to develop with many of the leading OEMs and car manufacturing brands. And as the time is already up, maybe just a short outlook basically on the right side. I already mentioned it, we always try to balance profitability and fast growth. So we always had a focus on very healthy unit economics, roughly 1,600 euro in CM2 margin, CM2 contribution, compared to a CAC of roughly 500. So we recoup our customer acquisition cost 3 times within the first 12 months already. Next year, we're targeting to become net income profitable in Germany, which would be a huge success for us, but at the same time also mentioned that we try to further expand and roughly reach 300 million in ARR by the end of next year, and at the same time hopefully close a successful Series C. So next time I'm here, I can hopefully talk about how Finn became profitable and also a successful further fundraising round. But many thanks already for that, and happy to talk to some of you later.